Yep. We are live.
I get hi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Proverbial Masterminds. I am Dr. Sherry, and this is my beautiful friend, Erin Harrigan.
Hey, everybody. Listen, I'm just going to say, I could never be in IT. I can barely handle my own technology.
I hear
but
that.
Here we are.
Well, before we got on, Erin and I were both exchanging exhibits of our desk and IT and equipment setup, and it's really hilarious. So all you guys see is like the beautiful background. You don't see the mess that's in front of us of wires of, well, you kind of see my mic here, but of wires, of mics, of cameras, of ring lights, of extension cords, of boxes where my computer's set on.
Right. Speaking of mic, I don't even have mine plugged in. Yeah. It's not glamorous, people.
It is not glamorous. No.
There is.
Oh my goodness. So we're going to actually dive in to part one, I believe, of what we're going to talk about next week. So, and you'll see why, because it's kind of this ping-ponging back and forth from the same topic.
That's such a great way to look at it. I'm so glad you said it that way.
And well, and oh my gosh, it's like it harkens back to, back in when we were going through chapter 2. I mean, we're in chapter 6 now, getting ready to head into chapter 7,
right?
Which will start next week. But it's like, oh my goodness, how many times can you say this to me? How many different ways can you say this to me? Because I'm about like blue in the face with it.
So totally. So you all are seeing that we have called this the thief versus the adulterer. And there's two things that I want to add to what you said.
Yeah.
What occurred to me as I was reading this morning is Solomon is David's son. David committed adultery.
Yes.
David, by the way, whose heart after God, right? Like committed adultery. Oh, and by the way, murder.
Right. Like, don't do what my dad did.
So don't do what my dad did. But in case you didn't get it the first 15 times, I'm going to keep saying it. So there's that. But then here's this. This is interesting. So in my Charles Stanley Life Principles Bible, which I talk about a lot if you follow me because I use it all the time, it says, Solomon, the principal author of Proverbs, writes for the purpose of enabling God's people to gain the divine perspective necessary to handle life's issues.
Mm-hmm.
And what it says above this, where was I reading this? It said that ultimately it takes the principles of the law of Moses, so the Mosaic ancient law, which wasn't ancient then, but we know obviously now that we've had Jesus, that's ancient law, and expresses them in a practical, easy to understand form that anyone can apply. So that really, what Solomon's doing is going, listen, we're going to take all this law, which I don't know if you've read through all of that, but there's a lot of law, right? And he's like, I want to give this to you in an easy, practical way so that you can actually apply it. And so clearly the idea of adultery, must have been rampant. I don't know.
Well, it is rampant.
And it is today.
It's no different.
No.
Right? So, Scripture tells us there's nothing new under the sun.
That is so, yes.
So, older people love to say people these days are just horrible. Now, I think we just know about it more because of technology, but it's always been there.
Always.
Right?
Always.
Yeah. So I'm going to read. So for those of you that have never joined us, what we do is we've been going since November 1st of 2020. We've been going through the book of Proverbs, one verse at a time. So we've been reading one verse a day. We invite you on that journey. Today we end on chapter 6, verse 33. And so then next week, when we meet back again in 7 days, we will be reviewing the verses that we read for the next week, which will be 6:34 through 7:5.
Yes.
So we'd love to have you on that journey. But so what we do here is since we don't do a show every day, I mean, that could be fun too, but my gosh, I don't think we'd ever get anything else done.
That would be a lot.
And so we have chosen to exercise discretion, which is the call of wisdom, and do this show once a week. So
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and read from the New King James Version.
Do it.
7 verses, including landing on today, that we have read over the past 7 days, including today. So this is from Proverbs chapter 6, verses 27 through 33. And my version says this: can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. People do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy himself when he is starving. Yet when he is found, he must restore sevenfold. He may have to give up all of the substance of his house. Whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He who does so destroys his own soul. Wounds and dishonor he will get, and his reproach will not be wiped away.
Right?
Aaron's just like, shame, shame, shame. Everybody knows your name. No, listen. I think it struck me when I was reading this that Solomon compared a thief to adultery.
Yes.
So as I was working through that in my mind and going, okay, what does that mean? Why would he do that? This is what struck me. So, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is just my interpretation. This is what struck me. So, because it says people do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his hunger because he's hungry, right? Like, we don't hate the person who steals because they're hungry. We also don't let them get away with it. If found out, they have to have recompense. They have to pay it back.
Yes.
Okay. So I thought about that and I thought, well, there's one food common to all. Like we all have this one food that we all feed on. But each of us has our own spouse that we feed on, right? So let's say feed on. Work with me. I'm just doing that for the comparison, right? So for food, you're hungry, there's one source that you go to food. It's not stealing from somebody else's food, that food is only meant for, there's a bond between them and that food.
Yes.
Well, with somebody's wife, if you are, or husband, let me make that very clear. If you go after somebody's wife or somebody's husband, that is their only prize. That is their only source. And so to steal that, you will be despised because there are other people for you to choose from.
Yes.
Right? There are people who are not bonded for you to choose from. And so because it got me thinking, like, verse 33, wounds and dishonor he will get, and his reproach will not be wiped away. The New Living Translation says his shame is never going to go away. And that is interesting on the heels of me just completing this surrendering shame series journey that I did. Because we know that shame is from the enemy. But here's the thing, taking somebody's significant other, spouse, whatever, taking something that technically, and I know people aren't the property of each other.
Right. But
they're in a committed belonging to one another. Taking somebody out of that, you can't fix that. You can't repay that. You can't make whole what you've tainted.
Yes. I love where you're going.
Right? Like, I can give you food back. I can give you money back. If I steal money, I can give you food, but I cannot give you the bond back.
Right.
That you had with that person.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why the shame will never go away.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean you can't be that you can't be made right with God. That's not what that means. That means people are going to go, huh, hey, she slept with whoever.
Forever known.
Right?
Yes.
Forever known.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The other thing that strikes me in what you're saying also is that we're not condoning theft.
No.
What's interesting, however, is this idea that if you were stealing for the need of your family, for the need of yourself, because of hunger, like this is a vastly different, if I could use the word, insidious hunger that you're trying to fill through adultery.
It's also a hunger.
It's a hunger. And it's just fascinating because it's not a hunger of something that you need. Like, please hear me. People steal other things.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about like stealing because you're starving, and again, not condoning it, but just saying like that is a physical survival need versus the hunger and the coveting, if you will, of someone else's partner. Like, it's really what, and here's the thing that I want everybody to know is that, we're coming at this through our wisdom, right? And we're using commentaries and different translations of the Bible, whether it's New Living Translation or the NIV or the ESV, et cetera. But it's just so fascinating, the multi-layers of what can be discovered when we're not just trying to take it at face value, which either I believe sounds like, I don't know what that says. Or, oh yeah, I know what that says. And that means that, you know what I'm saying? Like we sort of interpret it ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's so cool to sort of like unpack it through this conversation. I love that.
Yeah. And I like the picture of before at the beginning, in verses 27 and 28, can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? That to me says that we know. We know.
Yeah.
We know what we're doing. We know this is danger.
Right.
And so this goes back to all of the verses that we've read to keep wisdom around our necks, to keep it in front of us, to keep our eyes fixed on us, because it's too easy. It's okay. So going back to King David, with Bathsheba, he looked and he turned, and he looked and he turned, and he looked again.
Yeah.
And he took.
Yes.
We have an opportunity. We have a chance to look away.
Yes.
Look, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have desires or thoughts about somebody else.
Right.
But we can look away.
Yeah.
And poor David did not look away. And that, I think, is going to end up, I don't know, maybe end up leading into the next part, because as I was thinking about this, thievery, adultery, all of this about relationships, I was just thinking like it all goes into the 10 commandments.
Exactly.
Like the whole reason not to do this. And the commandments, we know that Jesus replaces the Mosaic law, as you referred to it. We know that. And we know that the commandments are there as guideposts.
And they stand.
Yes. And that when we don't obey them, we get burned.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's what I like about his practical wisdom, and the fact that he keeps talking about the crafty harlot. Now, listen, I want to be very clear, because this is not like a referendum on, slippery, slinky women. This is a referendum on the human condition and our desire to have that which we ought not, because we'll see later. I think it's not even, because I look ahead and look behind.
I know.
It's not even next week, but it's the week after where it talks about like how, she comes and she's like, hey, come with me, mister.
She's crafty. Like
She's
that Beastie
crafty.
Boys. I know the Beastie Boys song is it crafty or tricky? Anyway,
it's
whatever.
It's tricky.
See where we go.
Yeah. And so
from the Lord to the Beastie Boys.
That's right. That's right. This is that's why we are the proverbial masterminds.
The other thing that go ahead, you finish.
Well, I was gonna finish with maybe that's next week. A man without understanding. Did we read that today?
That
yeah. Whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. Now, he said that before. So this is a referendum of the human condition.
Yes.
And of our response to temptation. For these particular examples, he's just using the example of the crafty harlot, right?
Right.
It's not saying that women are just evil.
No.
Whatever.
And I'm so glad that you went to that, you used the word temptation, because that's exactly what was rolling through my mind as we were just talking, is that the point is, this is all the enemy and how the enemy uses humans, right? And this is just a portrayal of, here's one way, right? This is what the enemy does to tempt us, to get us off track. And the answer to that is, we know that we're going to have that trouble. We know that the enemy wants nothing more than to get us off that track. So we've got to keep wisdom close. We've got to be in the word. We've got to have and it's not just enough to be reading the word. It's to be in the relationship with the Lord.
To soak it in and meditate on it, to think about it and to let it direct our steps. And, listen, I am not without understanding that we don't sometimes put that on the shelf.
Yeah, we do.
So that we can pursue our own way.
Yes.
We do that. And it's my prayer that I do that less and less.
Yes. Yes.
And I know there will still be times.
And sometimes it's so subtle.
Yeah. It's not as obvious. Yeah.
It's not as obvious. Yes.
And I think, where's the verse that says the ways that are right to man, right, aren't right to God. So like, even just looking at the thief, well, he's hungry. I have to steal because I'm hungry.
Right.
Like, it makes sense, right? If I got to feed myself and my family, that's my only option.
Right.
Or that's what I see as my only option. Right. But what I love about that is because we know wisdom is about justness, rightness, righteousness. That when that is determined that a theft happened, recompense must be made.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, it's
so
good.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much more for that on that end, but I know that as we get into next week's, again, he goes back to, hey, remember the commands, remember the wisdom. But maybe we can do that just as a segue. So like, for those of you who don't know the 10 commandments, I don't have them memorized, by the way, but a lot of people do. And that's good. But they are not what saves you. No. So kind of like words to live by, right? God's words to live by.
Yes.
So the first 5 so the first half are about prioritizing a relationship with God. Like, that's the first half. So that parallels what we're doing here in seeking wisdom and seeking understanding and seeking what God says about things, prioritizing a relationship with God. Then the second half is about our relationship with others.
Yes.
I mean, I know number 5 is honor thy father and mother, but see, father and mother are a reflection of God, who is an authority over us. So that still reflects our relationship with God.
Yes.
Right. So the last 5, though, all of those can be seen in what we're talking about here in these 2 passages, in these 2 sections of Proverbs, and what we've talked about before. So number 6 is, don't kill anyone, don't murder anyone. Number 7 is don't commit adultery. Number 8 is don't steal. Number 9 is don't bear false witness against the neighbors. In other words, saying that they did something that they didn't do. And number 10, don't covet. Don't covet what your neighbor has that you don't have.
Yeah.
So if we look at food, we can say is stealing.
Yep.
It's also coveting.
Yes.
Right? Because I want something that I don't have that you have.
Yeah.
If we look at adultery, it's adultery. It's also stealing, because I'm stealing something that's yours, right? it's and maybe I'll bear false witness in the process.
Yep.
Well, you weren't good to her.
Yeah.
Or you weren't good to him. Right? So I had to come in and be the knight or princess in shining armor.
Right, right.
And don't covet. So I was looking like King David, coveting upon what was not mine. And then ultimately, the sixth commandment, that's what David fell into because he had the husband of the woman that he took killed.
Murdered. Yes.
So all of those things are intricately related.
And so relevant today. So
Mm-hmm.
relevant today. The other thing that I've heard, which is, I think, so beautiful about this, is that, as Sherry said, so the first 5 are about our relationship with the Lord and prioritizing the Lord, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like this. And then the second 5 are about our relationships together, which forms a cross. I mean, come on, God, right? Like how beautiful that is.
God's Easter eggs.
Like, I mean, come on, come on.
Somebody asked me about that. They were like, no, seriously, like an Easter egg? And I'm like an Easter egg, like people hide messages, in marketing and stuff, they put Easter eggs in places of things to come or whatever.
Right. Right. Yes.
So the cross hadn't happened yet.
But think about it.
Right.
Think about it. So good.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else other than that on this passage. I think it speaks for itself. I think it's, we know what we're getting into. We know that it's not good for us. We know it can't lead anywhere well.
That's right.
And we know that we will have to live with that thing.
Oh yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
And we might even be killed for it. I don't know about you, but I'm an ID channel junkie.
I am not, but
yeah. So like you don't do that because you're going to get killed. Like you are going to get, and that's not the only reason not to do it, but you're going to get killed.
Right.
That husband or that wife. And
you're
let me tell you,
in that bad triangle.
A wife that's deceived. Oh, you should see some of these women. I mean, there's a show called Women Who Snapped. Yes. Snapped. So don't
do it.
Don't be an ID channel episode.
No, or Dateline. I mean, God forbid. All right. That's what we got for you this week. But tune in next week because we're going to continue talking about this because we got more to come as we finish out 6 and start into 7.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.